If you are a millennial who is in any way interested in beauty or skincare, then you would have heard of Glossier. Glossier don't only sell skincare and makeup, but they sell a whole lifestyle. And in today's Behind the Beauty, I want to take a deeper look at Glossier, the CEO, their controversies, and where they are today. Chapter 1: The Super Intern. Glossier launched back in 2014, hoping to be the beauty and lifestyle brand of a whole generation. But to really understand the brand's origin, we need to go way further back and see whose lifestyle this brand is founded on. That of Emily Weiss. Emily eventually became the it girl of the beauty industry, but before that, she actually interned for Ralph Lauren for 2 summers. That's while she was still in high school, and she got this job through a neighbor who just happened to work at Ralph Lauren. It's Lauren, isn't it? Not Lauren. Even back then, she had connections. She already knew people. As I mentioned, she interned here for 2 summers before leaving to go to college at NYU, based in Manhattan. Whilst at college, Emily actually started a new internship for Teen Vogue, and this is where the general public would know and hear about her for the first time. Way before Glossier, Emily was featured on 3 episodes of reality TV series The Hills, being dubbed the Super Intern. Now, the show actually tried to make her look like a bit of a villain because she was really good at her job, which sounds really stupid. But her being so good at her job made the main stars of The Hills, Lauren Conrad and Whitney Port, look bad because Emily was clearly far more competent and knowledgeable in her role. And at the time, I was on Lauren's side. I was like, who does this Emily think she is coming in and trying to do Lauren's job better than her? But she was very good, giving her the nickname the Super Intern. After graduating from NYU with a degree in studio art, Emily got a job as a fashion assistant at W Magazine and as an on-set styling assistant for Vogue, where she assisted Elisa Santissi. Chapter 2: Into the Gloss. It was whilst working at Vogue that Emily started her lifestyle and beauty blog, Into the Gloss. This was in September 2010, finding time to write between 4 AM and 8 AM each morning before going to work. Into the Gloss was all about honest product reviews, beauty tips, interviewing successful women within the industry, but it was the blog's Top Shelf series that really made the blog really popular, drew in all the traffic, and was responsible for its rapid growth. And Into the Gloss became like the go-to beauty blog of the 2010s. I used to read it, not knowing who was behind it. Top Shelf was kind of like Harper's Bazaar's Go to Bed With Me series before they even did that. The Top Shelf series took a look inside the bathroom cabinets and personal lives of some of the biggest names in beauty and fashion. Emily herself at first, and then later down the line, a team of writers would sit on the bathroom floors of people like the Kardashians, designer brand founders, supermodels, Victoria's Secret models. As well as discussing the subjects' careers, they would discuss their favorite beauty products, their beauty tips and secrets. The interviews were done very casual. It was kind of like the vibe of like you and your best friend at sleepover, which made these blogs more readable and these lifestyles felt more attainable. You know, the readers thought if they followed this celebrity advice, these supermodels advice, that they could be like them one day. And readers could not get enough of it, so much so that by October of 2011, Into the Gloss was doing so well that Weiss actually decided to leave Vogue, and Into the Gloss became her full-time job. And after just 2 years, Into the Gloss was getting 200,000 visitors per month. And Weiss hired her friend Nick Axelrod, who had previously worked in publishing, to be the editorial director, and with a small team of writers, they then took Into the Gloss to the next level. They started posting about 3 to 4 articles per day, which tripled their views almost overnight. It was then that Emily decided that the best way to kind of like grow Into the Gloss and really capitalize on the popularity of her blog was to start selling and making their own products. So in 2013, she started approaching venture capital firms to try and get some funding. Out of the 12 firms that she actually approached, she was turned down by 11. But she finally obtained $2 million in funding from Kristen Green at Forerunner Ventures. Chapter 3: The Launch of Glossier. She used this money to expand her team and very quietly, like behind the scenes, started sourcing ingredients and testing products. And after years of writing Into the Gloss, Emily felt like she had a really good idea of what was missing within the beauty industry. Not only what she thought was missing, but what celebrities, what fashion and beauty influencers and her viewers, her readers, thought were missing within the industry. She also cleverly used comments, feedback from her readers on Into the Gloss to help product development and kind of figure out what the gaps were in the market. She found out what readers wanted from beauty products, and then she made it. It sounds so obvious nowadays. This is kind of how influencers and celebrities launch brands nowadays, but at the time it was fairly innovative. You had these big brands like L'Oreal and Estee Lauder. They didn't have that close connection with their customer base. They were kind of telling us what the consumer wants. They weren't getting honest feedback in the way that Emily was from Into the Gloss. Into the Gloss were talking to like a new generation of beauty enthusiasts in a more casual, relaxed, personable way, encouraging them to comment and discuss their experiences with products. So they had like this focus group without really knowing they had this huge focus group. So in October of 2014, after almost a year of very careful development, Emily and her team launched Glossier, a beauty brand for the Instagram generation. And when I say that, this brand was everywhere. They took over social media. They kept things very, very simple. And I remember when they first launched, they launched with just 4 products, and they were their Soothing Face Mist, Priming Moisturizer, Balm.com Salve, and Perfecting Skin Tint Foundation. Of course, their products were a success. This kind of launched at a time where people were wanting that no makeup look, and Glossier was the epitome of this trend, of this look. It was already a trend that was catching on from the blog, but along with their catchy slogan, skin first, makeup second, it was in direct opposition of what was huge on Instagram at the time. Instagram makeup, glamour focused looks, full phases of makeup being pushed by influencers and brands to consumers. Millennials were ready for something new, and Emily had noticed. She founded Glossier with a mission to democratize beauty and create products that enhance natural beauty. Makeup minimalism was about to take off, and Glossier were at the forefront of that. They had an amazing marketing team. Their branding played such a huge role in their early success. They had those pink bubble wrap pouches, which I don't know if they have anymore, but they were reusable. Everybody used them as like their toiletries bags. And these bags were as desirable as the actual products. I remember people selling them on Depop. They became iconic for a whole generation, building up a loyal army of customers and influencers, posting all their Glossier products with those pink bubble wrap Ziploc bags all over social media. There was a time you could not escape it. The brand launch was so successful that just after 1 month of launching, Glossier raised another 8.4 million in Series A funding led by Thrive Capital, which allowed them to hire 40 more members of staff and expanded their office space for all the new staff members that they needed. Emily's start in the beauty world was already turning heads. Everybody knew who she was. Everybody wanted to know more about her. Everybody wanted a piece of Glossier. Her name was already appearing in Forbes 30 Under 30 for retail and commerce sector in 2015, with the overall list consisting of 600 people across 20 different categories. Emily made it into Forbes' list of 20 standouts from overall 600 names, including some huge names in Hollywood like Blake Lively and NBA star James Harden. No idea who he is. Chapter 4, Becoming a Unicorn. After probably one of the strongest starts we've ever seen to a beauty brand ever, Glossier continued to grow at an awe-inspiring pace. Like it just went crazy. They were releasing hit after hit, including products like Boy Brow, the eyebrow pomade that was released in late 2015, and quickly became a cult favorite and one of their most popular products to date. It caught the trend that had just started, which is all about having like really nice, big, fluffy, natural brows. Think Cara Delevingne, who was huge at the time because of her eyebrows, and she was a great model. The brand's focus on product development led by customer feedback created such a huge cult following that all their products would sell out pretty much instantly. As I mentioned, the customers were telling Glossier what they wanted and Glossier would make it for them. One example of this is when they posted on Into the Gloss asking their readers what their dream cleanser would be. They said, what is your dream face wash? What ingredients are you interested in? What do you want it to do? Do you want it scented or unscented? They got thousands of responses and they used all that information to formulate their now pretty iconic and hugely popular Milky Jelly cleanser released in January 2016. Not my favorite cleanser. It's nice. It's got that rose scent to it though. I haven't used it for years. I don't know if it has it, but rose is not for me. They were so focused on customer feedback that they would even invite some of their most loyal customers and readers into the office. They dubbed these the Glossier girls. They would feed them pizza and give them rosé, and they'd have these pretty much business conversations where they'd ask these customers opinions on the company, current products, and what they wanted to see in the future. Again, I think this is a great idea. This process was clearly working. Glossier continued to grow grow. Their products were more popular than ever. They expanded their product line into serums, masks, shower gels, body lotion, fragrance, lip balms, and lipstick. They were so popular by mid-2016 that over 60,000 had signed up to be notified of when sold out products were back in stock. And I remember that time. I remember being on waiting lists to just review a product. I don't remember them gifting a lot of influencers anything, but I guess they didn't really need to. That's probably because their success had been achieved while spending very little on marketing or store placement, which was kind of a shock at the time in an industry that was dominated by giant legacy brands with their huge marketing budgets, their huge influencer marketing budgets, their huge, like ad budgets, who were all competing for that precious shelf space in brick and mortar stores. Glossier were like, didn't need to. With that being said, until now, Glossier didn't have any permanent physical locations. They pretty much relied on their really popular Instagram account with almost 1 million followers. Their engagement was like nothing ever seen before. People are engaged with Glossier. And of course, the Into the Gloss blog and their pop-up stores in major cities built up so much hype around the brand. But finally, in December of 2016, Glossier opened up their flagship store in New York, in the same building where the offices were located. It was created as an experience, a highly Instagrammable space, of course, set in the Soho district of Manhattan, so like a really trendy place. And instead of your average sales assistant, they would hire these people and kind of put them in pink jumpsuits and call them editors, who were there to be your friend and collaborator. They were there to make you feel like this shopping experience was a fun shopping experience, that you were just, shopping with your best friend. And again, their success continued in 2017, having raised $24 million in Series B funding. They were ready to expand internationally for the first time. They only had a store in the US and they didn't ship internationally yet. So if you weren't in America, you couldn't get Glossier products. I remember using a shipping service, and it would take months just to get my hand on 2 of their products and at balm.com. So when they launched in Canada in 2016, this was their first step towards bringing Glossier to a global market. The money they raised would go to permanent store locations, all in the US, and would be invested into technology. That's all they said. 2018, unsurprisingly, was another great year for Glossier, and it started with them raising more money, $52 million in Series C funding in February of 2018, with the company stating that the new funds will go towards improving the overall customer experience and developing exciting new digital products to bring their community together in new and innovative ways. And they also launched their second permanent retail store in LA in May of 2018. Their brand would continue to grow with their products and brand gaining more and more attention from the media, with their growing list of fans, including A-list celebrities, fashion icons. They were regularly talked about in magazines, newspapers, blogs, vlogs, and their list of celebrity customers would include Reese Witherspoon, Selma Hayek, and Beyonce. By the end of 2018, Glossier had more than doubled its revenue compared to the previous year and had surpassed 100 million in annual revenue, adding over 1 million new customers. Emily Weiss had even been crowned the Millennials Estee Lauder by New York magazine. Almost yearly fundraising rounds have become a bit of a norm at Glossier, and in March 2019 they closed their last one, raising a massive 100 million. This round was led by Sequoia Capital, and it gave the company a valuation of $1.2 billion. This valuation did something not many would have thought was possible at the start. It made Glossier a unicorn. In the business world, unicorn status refers to a privately owned company valued at over $1 billion. It's a status that very few companies ever achieve, and it's usually reserved for big tech companies or tech-focused companies like Facebook, Google, and SpaceX. And at the time Glossier had achieved this status, they were one of just a handful of companies which were led by women, and part of an even smaller number of beauty companies that had achieved this status. And with its millennial pink minimalist packaging, which I still love to this day, a little outdated, but I still love it, direct-to-consumer business model, and cosmetic products promising to never cover you up, turn you into something else, or overcomplicate your routine, Glossier had become a huge hit with young people and has successfully disrupted the way beauty companies operated. Chapter 5: The start of their struggles. Up until now, things hadn't necessarily been easy for Glossier. Emily and her team were working so hard, so hard, but things had gone fairly smooth, with the company growing rapidly and managing to avoid any major scandals. Unfortunately for Glossier, this would be their peak. The first controversies were just about to hit Glossier, and things wouldn't be so smooth from here on out. In March of 2018, the same month they had achieved unicorn status, the company launched their Glossier Play. This was a sub-brand focused on color cosmetics, and Play kind of featured like these high shine lip glosses, multi-purpose glitter gels in bright colors, basically everything that Glossier wasn't. It was a real departure from their signature barely there approach to beauty. And of course, unsurprisingly, the new Play products really met with very lackluster response. Like, that wasn't their audience, you know? I always mention that Glossier to me feels like a brand for people who already have good skin and don't need to hide anything. But I feel like what they did eventually become is a brand that does focus on enhancing what is already there. No matter what your skin condition, skin type, Glossier was a brand that worked with your skin. So these sun bright colors and fucking glitter and sparkles, the audience was like, no, not for us, thanks. But those weren't the only issues that fans had with their new range. People also started questioning Glossier's commitment to sustainability. The new Play products came wrapped in like these foil packets inside cardboard boxes, and many people criticized this as wasteful. And the eye gilet was packed with non-biodegradable glitter, and even the iconic bubble wrap Ziploc bags came under fire for being wasteful. Now, to their credit, Glossier did tweak the packaging. They were a brand who always listened to their consumers, so they tweaked it. They made it more environmentally friendly and sustainable. But this was their first, I guess you can say, major misstep, but it wouldn't be their last. The rest of 2019 would see a real slowdown in their sales, and for the first time, their Instagram followers on the Glossier account would start to drop. Chapter 6: Toxic Work Culture and Racism Accusations. 2020 would of course start with the arrival of COVID-19 and lockdown, closing down all their retail stores. And in 2020, Glossier would launch its first hand cream product, with the first 10,000 being donated to healthcare workers working on the front line of COVID-19. This would be a rare moment of positive publicity for Glossier in what was about to be a really turbulent year for the brand. At the end of May, after the murder of George Floyd and the rise of Black Lives Matter, Glossier joined a list of companies showing their support for the social justice movement. They committed by donating $500,000 to organizations combating racial injustice and pledged a further $500,000 in form of grants to support Black-owned beauty businesses. But what should have been a real positive moment for racial justice and good PR for Glossier soon became their biggest scandal to date. Seeing Glossier's public support of the BLM movement and declaration of importance of inclusivity and racial justice made a lot of their employees angry. This is because they felt that the company themselves had not been treating their own Black workers right, and they decided to take action. One former in-store editor, remember they're kind of like the sales advisors, stated, "If you're about to be in charge of helping other Black businesses, you need to fix your own house first." I've talked about this before, but this was a social media account called Out of the Gloss. This was created by former Glossier employees and was dedicated to sharing the horror stories that they experienced whilst working for the company. These stories and allegations focused on alleged racism, but also included hygiene issues and a toxic work culture. And this account quickly gained over 10,000 followers. Two editors who worked at the New York store, one calling themselves mixed race and the other Black, said that customers would often come in and like grab their hair, point at their skin, grab them by the arms, grab them by the hair in order to get their attention, saying that they never saw the white editors, the white sales advisors ever experience anything like this. One of the editors mentioned that when they brought this up to the store manager, she was told that she should feel empowered to tell people not to touch her. But when she tried to do so, the customers would complain about her and say that she was being rude. And then the manager would go up to the customer and apologize on Glossier's behalf instead of supporting their employees' boundaries. The same editor said that it was actually some of the store managers who would themselves engage in similar behavior, touching their hair, poking at their skin, making it more difficult for them to complain about these customer interactions that she found invasive because the manager was doing it themselves cells. A customer once also told this editor that she had the perfect, not too dark skin tone. And apparently when she reported that comment to the manager agreed and said, yeah, that's true. One black editor said that the customers often rejected the help of black sales advisors in favor of white employees. Another black editor, who described herself as light-skinned, said customers sometimes ask her for assistance after rejecting help from her darker-skinned black colleagues. And she complained about this to management, but she claims that instead of addressing the issue, the management told off her darker-skinned colleagues for failing to satisfy customers. Like, what were they supposed to do? Like magically lighten their skin color just to please customers? One employee who was asked to work a corporate event for Glossier claimed, a woman who worked at headquarters pulled me to the side, over-articulated her words, and asked me to clean up any food plates that were left on the table. I instantly knew that she thought I didn't speak English. I was the only Latina in the room. A number of ex-employees who told their story in an article for Fortune.com say they experienced repeated racial microaggressions from their white retail managers. This included a New York store manager telling an Asian employee during her first days on the job that she was just like the girl from Spirited Away, and a Los Angeles manager who put up a designer handbag for resale and told a black employee who wanted to buy it that she couldn't afford it. They say that although they frequently complained about these issues in end-of-day meetings, the behavior from managers never changed. Others say that they voiced concerns about limited shade ranges as well, only to earn negative reviews and low raises. In August of 2020, just before Glossier laid off all its retail staff due to the pandemic, the group behind Out of the Gloss published an open letter to Glossier, detailing the many grievances that they had with the company and what change they would expect from the company. I'll link the open letter in the description down below so you can read it for yourself, but I'll summarize it for you. In the open letter, they stated, "We find ourselves at the end of hostile interactions on the sales floor and braced for one with a manager, if we could find one. We couldn't trust them to diffuse or mitigate the harm of incidents like a man who felt entitled enough to massage an editor without her consent, a customer grabbing a black editor by the face to show off her complexion to a friend, repeatedly permitting a woman to enter the store whose sole engagement was with Latinx workers who she would disparage as illegals, a group of chaperoned white teens who'd come in near our closing time and applied some of our darkest complexion in gleeful blackface, or even after countless complaints, management wouldn't fire a manager who would routinely confuse BIPOC editors' names. On most occasions, we editors had to come to expect no intervention and little recourse, not even reassurance of our safety. HR is a dead-end resource. Over a span of years, incidents filed, including some workers' compensation claims, either haven't been escalated or even diminished during the reporting process. By contrast, when a customer voiced their dissatisfaction with an interaction to a manager, the customer were often gifted products, sometimes refunded the entirety of their purchase to ensure they left Glossier happy. They also stated that the penthouse showroom was outfitted with non-functioning air conditioning during the NYC summer. One inspector was quoted as saying, "The dumb girls in the pink don't even know what kind of fumes they are inhaling." Over 50% of retail employees were Black, Indigenous, and people of color, but the majority of the retail managers were white, as were the corporate staff, and retail staff's perception of head office was a club for rich white women. Glossier was supposedly built on 6 core values, inclusive, innovative, courageous, devoted to the customer, discerning, and curious. Weiss said Glossier was created not for the privileged, some, but for an activated all, whatever that means. This was not a good look for Glossier, particularly as they had gained recognition for their inclusive marketing campaigns, including individuals of all skin tones, ages, and genders. So Glossier did reply to this. They shared a statement on its website saying, "Starting in mid-June, we had a conversation with over a dozen retail team members about where Glossier had fallen short when it comes to the retail employee experience. We moved quickly to investigate their claims with guidance from the outside counsel, and on July the 10th, shared an initial action plan based on their feedback and findings from their investigation. The company says that it will implement this plan, which includes increasing HR support dedicated to retail employees and developing policies that hold our customers accountable for conduct in our stores," before it opened all retail locations after lockdown. In an additional statement to Fortune, the company added, "We are grateful to our former colleagues for coming forward to share their lived experiences and want to apologize and publicly acknowledge the pain and discomfort they experienced." Then in an email to their retail employees, Emily committed to adding a dedicated on-site human resource staffer at any retail location with more than 100 employees, along with a plan that would allow staff members to go direct to HR at head office instead of going through their management. The former employees who were behind Out of the Gloss made it very clear that they did not feel that Glossier's response to their comments was sufficient, with one former editor actually stating, if corporate or management doesn't take these things seriously, it is equivalent to allowing it to happen. And now it wasn't just employees that were losing their faith with Glossier. Some customers were now saying that they felt excluded by Glossier's brand advertising, claiming that Glossier was only for people who already had perfect skin. I kind of agree with that. All their marketing, all their everything shows people with perfect skin that just looks a little bit better because of the makeup. They went on to say that despite it being marketed as inclusive, it didn't feel very welcoming for people with anything other than perfect skin. Glossier had also started facing growing pressure to diversify its products, most notably from the followers of the Glossier Brown Instagram account that started back in 2017. This was an account that was dedicated to sharing tips on how to use Glossier products if you had darker skin tones. Like people trying to hack the products just so they can use them. The account had grown over the years since its creation, with more and more people starting to notice the lack of diversity and inclusivity of Glossier's products. When their popular Perfecting Skin tint was first launched, it only came in 3 shades. And since then, the brand has expanded to include 12 different shades, though obviously this still isn't great when you see competitors such as like Fenty and Rare Beauty. Rare Beauty, for example, not only have a helpful shade finder on their website, but its foundation is available in 48 shades. And I believe Fenty has 50, something like that. This day and age, it's just not acceptable. And this was part of the problem for Glossier. They started out as this really innovative and disruptive brand in the beauty world, but over the years, they just kind of got a bit stagnant, falling behind the competitors who are becoming more innovative. They weren't the only brand providing this kind of like no makeup products that they pioneered. Customers now had more options and they weren't using Glossier. Chapter 7, Emily's Fall from Grace. Emily herself had become an it girl. As I mentioned, she was gonna do it. She became an it girl, and she was an inspiration for so many women in the entrepreneurship space. She had inspired a lot of young people who wanted to be like her, who were inspired to reach her level of success. And her Instagram still has about 800,000 followers who regularly comment. They're so engaged. They love her. She epitomized what a girl boss was, you know, becoming one of the leaders of the era. She was a millennial icon. But the recent controversy really hit her personal brand hard. Most people didn't directly accuse her of this racism or being particularly toxic in any way, but they did hold her responsible for failing to put appropriate systems in place in her retail stores, for letting her workforce grow so quickly but failing to grow the HR team, and for failing to put appropriate policies in place, and for failing to create a workplace culture that was genuinely as inclusive and friendly as she talked about on her blog. The first real controversy led to further scrutiny of Emily and her management of the company. And despite obtaining a further round of funding worth $80 million, she's just getting funding everywhere, isn't she? In July of 2021, with Glossier reaching its highest valuation ever at $1.8 billion, the board was starting to get frustrated with the slowing sales growth, the damaging controversies over the last year, and Emily's weird obsession with trying to make Glossier into some kind of beauty tech hybrid company. According to Marissa Meltzer, who very kindly gifted me ages ago the book Glossy: Ambition, Beauty, and the Inside Story of Emily Weiss Glossier, Emily had wanted to make Glossier a tech company from the very start. She said that when Emily was looking for funding before Glossier's launch, it had all been like a little bit confusing. The book says that she kind of wanted to maybe do an app, but also wanted to sell products. That's probably part of the reason why she got turned down by so many investors, because they were like, what? Like, what do you want to do? But luckily she got her first investment, but they decided to start by focusing just on beauty products. But Emily still wanted to make Glossier a tech company. Again, according to Meltzer, at Glossier's height, Emily liked to fashion herself in the vein of tech founders whose books lined her living room. She wanted to establish Glossier as more than a beauty product company. She wanted to prove that it could be a disruptive tech company. I don't get why. Apparently she was very fond of saying, people ask, is Glossier a tech company? Is it a beauty company? And I say yes. Who was asking that? I don't think anyone ever saw Glossier as a tech company. She really wants to control her narrative, says Meltzer, and she was enthralled by the idea of being this tech founder style entrepreneur where the narrative in the media is not about their personal life, but their genius. I feel like she kind of did that through beauty. In researching for her book, Meltzer said that she spoke to a dozen former Glossier employees. They all kind of said that, well, they all kind of confirmed that Glossier had been trying to make an app for like the longest time since 2017, but no one could really answer whether the app had been given a name or what it was going to do, what the app was for. And all the while, Glossier is like pouring money aggressively into recruiting talent from blue chip companies such as Facebook, Instagram, Amazon. Then between 2018 and 2021, Emily was reportedly set. She had a mindset on building a digital social media platform, similar to Instagram or Facebook, where customers could shop and chat with each other. And I feel like this could have worked back in the day, you know, when Glossier first launched and people were so engaged with their Instagram. But executives had grown tired of wasting money on tech that never materialized, and they were getting worried that the company were actually starting to lose its way and wasn't focused on the core of the business, beauty. The company have now been releasing new products, like every 3 to 4 months, as opposed to every 4 to 6 weeks, like in their heyday, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's nice to see brands like slow down like this, not for shareholders though. And in 2020, Glossier actually faced some backlash after mislabeling some of their products as vegan. Customers and activists had to point out that despite Glossier saying their product was vegan, when you actually look at the ingredient list, there are animal-derived ingredients. Glossier basically corrected their mislabeling and promised to do better. In January of 2022, Emily admitted that the company had lost its way. It got distracted and said that Glossier had made some mistakes, and it was at this point that 80 of their employees, largely from their tech team, were laid off. Just a year after reaching its highest valuation ever at $1.8 billion, the leading investors in that round of funding, Lone Pine Capital, now valued the company at 30% less. The board's frustration in decreasing sales, impatience, and lack of belief in the tech side of the business that no one had seen yet, but Emily kept going on about, combined with the failure of Glossier Play, which was discontinued in January of 2021, led to Emily stepping down as CEO in May of 2022. According to Meltzer, Weiss was basically forced out, saying, "I think it was a case of you could either stay and have very little authority, and the board is going to really make a lot of decisions and get the company back on track, or you can step down while you're pregnant." She was having her first child, and craft your own narrative about leaving. It wasn't much of a choice. However, after returning from maternity leave, Emily would continue on as an executive chairwoman of the board. Chapter 8: Glossier's potential rebirth. Glossier was in this new era of its history now. Kyle Lea, I believe it's pronounced Lea, a former executive at Nike, and Cole Haan, who became chief operating officer at Glossier in November of 2021, took over as CEO after Emily's departure. The company would return to its roots. They always return to their roots, right? Of listening to its consumers and providing what they wanted. This is what worked so well for them in the beginning, what they had steered away from. They're going back to it. The top 3 things people were asking: why aren't you in Sephora? Why aren't you in Ulta? Why don't you ship to my country? And can you please make new products? And under Kyle's leadership, they started to address those questions. I think I called her Kylie, sorry. Glossier finally ended their years of being purely a direct-to-consumer brand, and in February of 2023, all 600 Sephora stores in the US and Canada began selling Glossier. Kyle also invested heavily in Glossier Labs so that they could actually provide customers with the new products that they had been so desperately waiting for. And also, after customer feedback, they've also reformulated one of their most popular products, Balm.com, swapping out non-renewable petroleum with plant-based castor oil. Glossier says it sold $1 million worth of the balm in 1 week after the change. However, earlier this year, Glossier announced the launch of a new Balm.com flavor, and with that, a reformulation back to the old formulation of Balm.com, as consumers weren't happy with the reformulation back in 2023. However, this is only with the new strawberry Balm.com flavor. Glossier has opened more stores, including a new flagship in Manhattan. In typical Glossier fashion, it's very Instagrammable. They've got like a mosaic and like a mirrored wall just for taking selfies. And Glossier now has 10 stores around the US and 1 store in London. They continue to run their grant program for Black-owned beauty businesses, and by 2024, they have given out almost $2 million in funding to relevant businesses in both the US and the UK. It still remains to be seen whether or not Glossier can get back to the heights that they reached just a few years ago, but the initial signs under Kyle's new leadership looks positive. A return to focusing on creating a close connection with their fans and their consumers and actually listening to what they want again. This could be the key to rebuilding Glossier. In an interview with Harper's Bazaar, Emily Weiss once said, "Women are ready for a beauty company that actually listens." She was right, and now hopefully Glossier can be that beauty company again.